Afternoon, gang. Today, our video topic is just going to be based off of a comment left to us by Zen in our depression video that we recently did, and always appreciate his comments. He's got a lot to say, man. I'm excited to see him kind of start up his own channel. I know he's talked about that quite a bit, and I think he'd have some pretty cool topics to get into. But the question that he had brought up in the depression video that we had discussed was just talking about kind of the origins of depression, pretty much, like kind of where it starts, where there's this perception that all depression is basically a chemical imbalance at times, right? Well, especially medically, where it kind of gets perceived as the only way to fix the depression issue is to be on the correct medications, because this is the only thing that can really combat it. And he talked about how depression is related to an individual's perception and how the situation itself is neutral, but the way that we're looking at the situation and the way that we're going about it is the thing that can kind of create mental illness and start problems. And he kind of just wanted to hear our thoughts on that. And I, for one, agree a whole lot. You know, I think that when we talk about a great, I'd probably say even a majority of the people, at least, that I see coming in, I feel like what they have, what I would consider situational depression, you know, where they're in a difficult circumstance right now, whether it's related to a financial issue like grief, or maybe something's going on with their kids, maybe it's illness related. There's all kinds of things that can affect us, right? But that person's mental state is largely being affected by their current personal circumstances. You know, like the thing that's going on is creating a lot of stress, and then their stress response is what's causing the depression and that feeling of hopelessness, you know. But I'll kind of let you talk. I've been taking over. Like, what are your kind of thoughts on the depression and the origins and how all that kind of thing starts?
Well, I mean, part of what he was also saying was about how we perceive the thought that we have to be happy at all times. Like, if we're not doing something fun or doing something that is enjoyable, then we're failing. Like, we're not supposed to be sad ever, and or just upset or anything. Like, we are supposed to be portraying this level of happiness at all times, and that's not realistic for anybody. One of the first things that I think people should do anytime that they are coming to a therapist is rule out a medical condition for why they're having these kind of issues. I just actually had this conversation. This lady's been doing everything I tell her to do, all the coping skills. Her life doesn't suck, but her medication just keeps getting upped. And why don't you ask your doctor to run some blood tests? And I know we've had clients that their potassium levels have been too, I believe it was high. It made them psychotic. Like, there can be medical reasons why you are feeling this way, as well as just
cognitive situation.
It doesn't have to be an imbalance. It could just be something. That's the first part that I wanted to put out there before we just talk about, like, situational parts of your life, because sometimes there is just something. It could be a quick fix, like
urinary tract infections.
Urinary tract infections, yes. But like, if you're diabetic and you're eating the wrong kinds of foods, or even if you're just eating the wrong kinds of foods, like if you have ADHD, eating certain like dyes, we know like the McDonald's food is actually supposed to cause people that have ADHD to have worse symptoms. Making sure that we rule out that before we jump to a psychiatric disorder, except we don't have that ability. When you see us and you say, I have this, this, and this, oh, you have these symptoms, we don't have the ability to say, we think that it's this, or why don't we check on this? We just have to go off of what you are telling us.
And I do think that's kind of a flaw in the system a little bit too, is the fact that the way that diagnostics are done when you come into a place are solely based off of the client's what would you say, their
perceptions of what's going
on,
like
their perception, or just like their testimony, I guess. Yeah,
because like I've said, I've had people come in and say, I have this, and it's like they're reading out of the diagnostic manual. Of the ADHD is a big one that I see a lot, because their doctor will send them to me, and as an adult, I don't have like questionnaire to send your parents or your school or your job to be like, are they functioning okay? I have to go off what you're telling me. And if you're saying I'm doing this, and then their feet miraculously start tapping, or their legs, and they start like glancing off into space when after I ask them if they have difficulties paying attention.
Like, you know what? Now all of a sudden.
And I don't have a choice but to go off what they're saying. I can't just be like, this is a bunch of BS. I do put in like, oh, they have this kind of addiction as well, so that maybe the doctor's not going to just be like, here's your Adderall.
Right, and just start prescribing willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I do think that that's a major case of like asking to sit, like the blind leading the blind almost, you know, where if somebody's coming in sick and like they have like a mental health illness or something going on, their testimony a lot of the times can be flawed, you know, like that's why they're coming in to see you. And I think that is something that kind of gets overlooked at times with just traditional mental health services and that kind of thing, is that you to be solely responsible for going off of like this person's testimony that's coming in, and especially if they have an illness like borderline personality disorder or just like a bunch of other stuff where you don't know who the heck this person is coming in and like what their potential their reasonings and just like their modus operandi behind this stuff is. You got no idea, but they expect you to have a diagnosis after the first session, and like it's
not just the person, insurance companies in your job require it's not just expected, it's required.
I think that's a major issue, man, like because I know like billing purposes to bill insurance, but to expect care providers to sit there after one session with a person and say, yeah, you definitely got this. There's no there's no wonder at this point why so many people have mistaken diagnoses, you know, because if you have that requirement of somebody coming in like, sorry, bud, we got to know what they got when they first get in, that's such a bad way to do it, because there's so many like quote unquote false positives when it comes to mental health symptoms and stuff. Like, are you depressed or do you have bipolar? Are you depressed or do you have ADHD? Because that can look like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where you, upon your first hour and a half meeting with somebody, there's no way in hell, like unless barring extremely clear cut, like ideal circumstances, it's very difficult to get a completely accurate diagnosis off of the first thing. But yeah, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but I'm glad that you brought that up, man. But
well, to go back to the statement that was made in this, it says this guy was the commenter was watching this, or I'm not sure, I'm focused on a different part now, but that to live a full life, you need to spend a large amount of time experiencing other emotions other than happiness. I agree with that, because I think if we don't learn how to deal with those kinds of things, then when they happen, we fall apart. It's just like we're put together with sand, and then when you pour some water on, we just like everything just crumbles around, and we're just left with a blob that we've got to try to figure out how to build back up. When we are little, our parents oftentimes, especially like one of the biggest criticisms with the current generation is that we reward them with everybody gets a participation trophy. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I'm not even going to get into that whole thing. I think that a lot of times we try to coddle our kids to the point where they never have any kind of failure. And I'm completely guilty of that too. Like, we try to protect our kids because we know what it was like. I sucked. I would have loved some kind of participation thing outside of knowing information and being good at doing stuff, like mentally. But we don't let our kids experience that negativity anymore. And we don't force them to do things that they don't want to do. Now they have the constant stimulation with the video games in front of them with the iPads and the phones, and we do all this too. We're not great.
Yeah, this isn't crapping on anybody by any stretch, man, because there's definitely stuff that we've got to work on, but we've definitely had conversations about how we do need to kind of let them figure out stuff more, about how when you do completely coddle somebody like that, it creates this sense of entitlement and just a lack of resilience, like not only does it just make them an incorrigible person to be around where you just don't even enjoy their company, but you're doing them a disservice because when they're in a situation where they don't have somebody like you to completely take care of everything, they're gonna sink. They're not gonna even have the tools necessary to provide and basically just make it in the world because they never had to, and I think that's why that's important, right? Is that like it's not just about like giving everything to somebody or just trying to spoon feed somebody all the answers or make them feel good all the time. I completely agree with Zen when he talked about negative emotions completely necessary. Like you got to know how to deal with it because it's a part of the spectrum of life experience,
Well, then it goes back to like I work with a bunch of different agencies and stuff, and when something happens to one of their clients, then it's my fault.
Right.
Their client woke up in a bad mood, depressed, and that's what depression is sometimes.
They need to talk to you. They're
need
sad
to talk
right now.
To me. Like I was on maternity leave for 6 weeks. That's all I got, 6 weeks. That's a whole nother video about why our system sucks. But
Definitely
I come back and I'm getting told that due to you not being here, this person is having difficulties and is wanting like to kill themselves.
Kills me. Yeah.
That's nothing to do with me. The client was able to tell me that has nothing to do with you. I woke up depressed. That's what depression is. And if the people are not able to handle their depression without running and talking to me, I'm not doing my job. Like, luckily, my clients understand that because I am a big advocate of this. Like, if you suck, you suck. It's not me sucking.
Or anybody else around you.
You. Because, like, we talk about, like, if you were going to overdose and use heroin, you're going to use heroin. I could follow you everywhere, but you can go to the bathroom and use heroin in the bathroom for 30 seconds while I'm standing outside the door. There's no way for me to control you. And if I'm trying to control you, I am sucking. So it's always this big thing of we need to do better at holding ourselves accountable and allowing people to do better on their own. Absolutely. Like, hold their hand to an extent, but
help guide them. But
we've got to, like, show them the way and then let them make their own mistakes.
Right, so they don't feel like they have to be lifers in therapy because that's the only way that they can do okay. And I think that gets to the heart of what Zen was talking about in his comment was just he basically had asked, like, do we feel that a lot of depression and mental health disorder has to do with personal perception? I 100% think that it does, man. Like, I think that one of the biggest things that you get taught, like, when you're doing therapeutic services is about cognitive lenses and just the way that people view the world and stuff, and it's important to know that every situation in life isn't happening to screw you necessarily, like situations occur, like things happen, like things break down or just opportunities don't come together. And what ends up happening where I feel like depression starts to set in is when somebody starts to take these losses or these bad things as like personal slights against them, or feeling like they did something wrong, feeling like they were responsible for this, or if I was a better person, or if I just did this different, then maybe things would be like this. And I think an important part of getting better is learning to take the personal aspect out of a lot of things,
Well, it goes back to, like, the perception is key of what you were looking at or what you were talking about. The other day I was at work and I left real quick, and I was only supposed to be gone a couple minutes. I forgot something at home, so I was going to grab my errand real quick and then go home and get what I needed. And while I was out for just the couple minutes, my brakes went to the floor on my vehicle. So I was in a busy part of town, and I was able to stop my van. $1,500 later, we have our van back. But normally, like, and I was struggling with it. I was trying not to get, I was looking at the situation from, what
is he doing down there?
I don't know. I was looking at it as like, that's $1,500. I don't like to spend money like that, and that stresses me out. I didn't have my vehicle, and I was really stressed. And then I started looking at it as, but I didn't die. Like, I didn't have my kids in the car. They are okay. I didn't hurt anybody else. And that was like, I was scared to death because I was right in a busy part, like I said. And nothing happened.
And you had the money to get it repaired.
And even if I didn't, like, I have another vehicle. I can't haul any of my kids in that vehicle, but we have abilities to get this done. And I was still struggling with it, but that's what I just kept telling myself over and over in my head. Like, I'm okay. My kids are okay. We are going to be okay. And other times, like, some of that stuff can just lead me to despair, and I'm just, like...
depending on where your head's
wallowing
at, right?
in it and being like, my life sucks, everything bad happens to me, blah, blah, blah. And it could be something little, too, that just sets you off. Like, you are trying to get the mail, and you didn't get your piece of mail that you were expecting, or, like, something like that, and then you're just like, well, fuck it.
Life is ass. I hate this place. Like that kind of thing. No, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, where perception, as much as of a cliche as it sounds, it really determines how everything's going to go for you, you know, and building up that ability to see life in an objective way rather than like a personal attack or in a personal light is a skill. I think that's something that has to be built up, and I think that's where the difficulty comes in, right? Where I was listening to somebody talk where they said that you should strive for simplicity, but in reality, being a simple person is a very hard thing to do. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, man, where a lot of the lessons that we know to be true or things that in our head and our heart, we're like, okay, that makes sense, aren't always the things that we do and when the situations come up. You know, when the situation actually shows itself, it's a lot harder to be that person that you know you should be as opposed to like what's actually what you want to do, you know. And I think that's where therapy and just introspection and just all this personal growth stuff comes from. And that, like, yeah, you may know it, but knowing this and being able to do it are two very different things.
And sometimes, like, even that thought can get me down. Like, I know I should be handling this better. I know I should be thinking of it this way. And sometimes, like, being tired is a big thing that will send me, like, my ability to handle stressors when I'm tired is way lower. Like, my threshold for everything, like, if you're coming at me and you're being stupid at all, like, I'm gonna say something that I probably shouldn't have. I have no filter. But, like, we have a baby, and she doesn't exactly sleep very well. She's sleeping right now, great. But if when I'm trying to sleep at night, she's not sleeping. So I'm tired, and I have a kid downstairs screaming for no reason right now. Like, that kind of stuff could sometimes be like, what the hell is going on? And you react in ways that you normally, like, later you're like, why did I do that? But being able to recognize that, hey, I'm tired, I'm not going to do this very well, is something that we need. I'm aware of it in myself, but like that whole Snickers commercial, are you hungry?
Not yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. If you're hungry, angry, tired, or lonely, like, it can make us act in ways that or overstimulated. That's not in the list anywhere. We get overstimulated just like other people. So it's very important that we be aware of ourselves and how we perceive things.
100% with you. And I think to that token too, it's important to be good to yourself, you know, like the same way that sometimes it's easier for us to look at other people in a difficult situation or somebody that's been through some crap and then like be able to cut them some slack. A lot of people don't know how to do that for themselves at all. Like, they can understand when somebody else is going through something hard, but like when they're going through some shit and they need some help, they're really shitty to themselves, you know, like
it's that negative self-talk. I do it to myself, but I tell my clients, like, what would you tell somebody else that was going through this? And they are always like, I would tell them, like, you know, it was just one time, or something like that. It's like, then why aren't you telling yourself that? We hold ourselves to this unreasonable standard that most of us can't ever reach what we expect out of ourselves.
Because there's that old saying, right? Like, people ain't shit. Well, you're people. You know? Like, the same way that we have, like, tempered expectations when we're dealing with others. Because we know that everybody's flawed. Like, you have to have that same realization for yourself, too. Where you gotta sit there and be like, you know what? I ain't shit. Which means I'm gonna mess up, you know? I'm gonna have times where I need help. Like, I'm not above or below anybody else. Like, I have the same wants and needs and everything else going on that other people do. And if other people need assistance and support, that means I'm going to at some point too, you know? And that's big, man. Oh, so cute.
And then going back to the how we perceive things, like, and back to the comment, we do put ourselves in situations, like, I feel like too often now we have the ability, if we don't like doing something, we don't have to do it. So if I don't, like, if I find out that I suck at doing a lot of stuff, then I'm just not gonna try, because I don't want to feel like that, and I don't want to feel like I'm getting sad or depressed, and so I don't even put myself in that situation when I could maybe do it better.
And you kill me with that, I tell you the truth. Like, you need to give this a shot. And I do think that's something that we got to be wary of, right? Is the fact that, and I think in order to be a healthy and happy person, you have to consistently do things that challenge you. Like, not saying you have to be throwing yourself, like your life has to be this series of events that you hate waking up in the morning. Like, I don't think that's a good way to have it, but you have to feel like there's something in your life that you're either striving for or that you're working towards, or like something that just gives you some sort of challenge, man. Like, it's necessary, I think. Like, when we don't feel like we have anything going on that's worthwhile or anything that's making us operate on a higher level, then we stagnate. And when we stagnate, we get depressed. And we know what depression looks like, man. Like, we're not creatures that are okay with just with not being all right, you know, with not having anything going on. Like, I think that all of us have to have something, and what that's going to be is different for everybody, you know. Like, some people get that satisfaction from some people get that satisfaction from their family, some people get it from their job, some people have a hobby, some people are in the arts, you know. Like, it's a lot of different things, but I think that if you don't got it, then you should work on finding it. It's worthwhile.
And it doesn't have to be, like, one of the things that we talk about here is, like, we make comments about, like, I work multiple jobs and stuff like that. That's because
my man got 2 jobs.
I just, like, accepted a 3rd job, plus going to school full time and having all these kids. But literally, I enjoy working. I do, but I don't.
Get your rocks off.
I like having money.
Doing these jobs.
I think it's more the money. If I made enough at one job, I probably wouldn't work the other jobs. But my first and second job aren't really fulfilling the part of me that I want them to fulfill. And rather than, like, I am getting the PhD to hopefully be able to fulfill that. But in the meantime, I continue to get different jobs because I know what I need to help me. Mm-hmm. And the school, I literally applied for the schooling because I was bored out of my mind, and I'm like, what am I going to do when the schooling's over? Because I'm going to be back to not having all that stimulation and feeling like I'm doing something with my life. Like, yeah, I work and yeah, I help people, but at the end of the day, it's not what I need for me.
For you, on a personal level. And I think that's important. Like, because just the same way that she's my wife, we're in a relationship, the things that I need are different than what she needs, you know? Like, if I would currently had her schedule, I'd probably be miserable. Like, I don't want to be doing what she's doing right now, man. But for her, it's not overwhelming, you know? Like, for her, she enjoys the schedule that she got, at least to the extent that she's able to manage it, and she likes juggling a bunch of things at once. for me, like, I got my full-time gig. That's pretty awesome. I'm cool with that. And then outside of that, I like content creation and stuff. You know, I like having time to work on my music, to put together these videos, to play games, and just like do other like random crap and just do stupid stuff with the kids. You know, she likes hanging out with the kids too. I don't want to make her sound bad, but but we value different stuff, and that's, I don't know. Sorry guys, we got our baby wrapped up in these cords. Don't call children's services. Did you get her?
No, yeah.
Okay, we're good. But the same way that she gains fulfillment from that, and I gain fulfillment from my own hobbies and stuff, like, you got to figure out what that means for you, man. Like, maybe you are the sort of person that really has a job that you can throw yourself into and that'll make you feel fulfilled. Maybe you are the sort of person that like has a hobby that you know is great, like you're super into like making music, or you're somebody that would be into video content creation, and maybe you just haven't given it a shot yet. But I think you gotta find it in order to fulfill that part of you that we're all looking for, you know?
And what we have this conversation because I'm not good at a lot of stuff. And I am always saying, I wish I could do that. And he responds every time with, well, why can't you?
Literally, though. Like, why don't you just pick up the damn thing?
Like, I wish that I could dance. And I wish that I was the kind of person that liked to go hang out with people and, like, go to parties and stuff. And I'm just not. And I either have to push myself to do that stuff or kind of move on and find something else that makes me happy. And if I'm trying, like, for me, if I was to put myself in that situation where I am at a party and there's a bunch of people around, I'm putting myself into that situational that we're talking about where I'm supposed to be happy, and outwardly, yeah, my pictures are probably going to be looking happy, but inside I am miserable. I'm not one to want to be around a bunch of people like that. Especially now with the pandemic going on, I don't want to be.
Well, and that goes back to knowing yourself, and the only way to really find out who the heck you are is by trying stuff. You know, the only way you're gonna figure out whether you're a person that's loves social gatherings, you're more of a loner, is that you gotta go to some parties. You know, you gotta step outside of your comfort zone, and I think that that's what all this goes back to. You know, is like trying crap and figuring out what you like. The only way to do that is by taking that step outside of your comfort zone. Like, you gotta try new stuff. You gotta be willing to put yourself in a situation where you could potentially be uncomfortable so you can figure out yourself, you know, like to figure out what the heck you actually enjoy so that you can find that fulfillment. See, our baby has realized that she doesn't like being held like that. So she realized
her fulfillment is getting fed.
Her fulfillment is. She loves eating and sleeping and making faces at people. She loves these things.
But literally, my biggest thing that I tell people is what works for you. And if it actually makes you happy, then why not? Like, just because you like weird things doesn't mean that I have to like weird things. And doesn't mean that
was that personal? Or are you talking to me?
I kind of was talking to you. And it doesn't mean that there's anything less about them.
My things are cool, by the way. I like cool things.
Definitely not.
Gundam fans, rise up. Where were you going with this? Get to the point.
I was thinking of Gundam, but I wasn't gonna say it.
Why am I embarrassed?
I'm not trying to get negative.
Like it's a curse word. Like, he likes the Gundams, guys. Shut up. What were you saying?
I don't even know.
Good. It's probably stupid anyway.
Don't hang out with people like this.
Don't hang out. Oh, whatever.
No, but like it goes right back to the people. Like, I'm a jerk and I make rude comments all the time to him. Like, if you don't have high self-esteem and you're hanging around me, probably you shouldn't, because I'm gonna literally tell you how it is. Oh, and man. He's just like, okay, like
I'm not one for softies. I'd say that's fair. You know how to hit a nerve every now and then.
And my friend, I used to work with this girl, and I was her supervisor, and we're friends, but she messed up, and I commented on her report, like, did you have a stroke when you were writing this?
I forgot about that.
It was so bad. And
oh, God.
And somebody else was like, that was really bad, and she's just like, that was funny. Like, but you've got to be able to if I was around somebody else, I could be the cause of their depression.
Reading the room, that kind of thing. Absolutely. And I do think that there's something to be said about resilience. Like, I think that we all should have a certain level of not having our feelings hurt by everything you're going to encounter, you know? Like, I think that the reason that it's bad to be soft in that sense is because the world doesn't give a F about your feelings. And if you constantly take things personal or can't handle people saying ignorant stuff, then it's going to be really hard for you to interact with nearly anybody, you know?
And I feel like when we are going back to the Western versus Eastern, I feel like over in the Eastern, like, they are more forthcoming with that kind of stuff.
I get, like, blunt in
like,
some
if your
sense,
boss
right?
thinks that you're doing a bad job, like, he's going to tell you to go kill yourself or something. Like, that's a very extreme situation.
Commit seppuku. You just like, this is a terrible job. I get you. You feel like we gotta dance around things a little bit more here. It's interesting, man, because I know that and there are a lot of difference between like Asian culture and like Western culture, and especially like in like the work environment and that kind of stuff too. I know that there's big differences, and that's something that I kind of just like to look into more myself. But I do think that there's something to be said, man, about learning to foster that kind of internal strength, you know? Like, you can't get hurt by everything that somebody says, man, because it's going to be a long life ahead of you. I
feel like they're happier over there. They eat better. Their foods are usually fresher. They don't usually eat as much junk as we do. And they kind of like, they know what's expected of them, and they feel like a sense of duty to do it.
Collective, right? The
collectiveness of it, and then they do it and they're happy because, like, I'm not trying to get any negative mask things or anything, but like, they wore masks before masks were the cool thing to do in the world over in the Eastern countries. And that's because they're trying to look out for everybody else. And now here we are, like, my face, my body, whatever.
Right, like comparing it to, and
it shows you how much he pays attention to my schooling, because I've done so many papers on the difference between...
I know you taught some of mine.
Between Western and Eastern jobs and stuff.
Just because you read it don't mean I read it. But no, you're 100% right, is that I do think that in cultures over there is this tendency to realize that you aren't the most important thing, you know? Like, you are and you aren't. Like, you are because, like, yourself is all you got. Like, you only know, like, your individual perceptions and stuff, but the world is not in a constant revolution around you, you know?
You know your role. And you're accepting of your role for the most part.
I get you. You know, you know what parts you play in the machine and that kind of thing, and you're okay with doing that. And I think that there are times where that's negative, but there are also times where that can be extremely positive too. You know, like, I can see it in both senses, and I don't know, man. I think that could probably end up being a whole discussion by itself, talking about like the pros and cons of individual versus like collectivist sort of values and that kind of thing. Because I'm not saying that it's inherently worse in any sense, man. I can see, especially right now, you want to talk about freaking during pandemic times, like how great it would be if we did have a more collectivist mentality where we are able to put the needs of the group ahead of just, this is what I want.
Because our friend actually has, like, her doctors told her, if you get this virus, you're gonna die. Like, she's got so much wrong with her. And her friends, people, like, multiple people have told her, like, I mean, it's natural selection. You get it, you die. Like, it happens. And I've seen people comment on Facebook on hers and other people who have disorders, I shouldn't say disorders, they have medical issues, and they're like, well, at least it saves you from having to go to a nursing home if you die.
It's just so callous and just ignorant, you know, because that person would not say that if the person that was sick was them, their mom, their sister, or it would go down the list, right? But there's just that I think that's where the issue arises, is that for a lot of people over here, man, it's not a problem until it hits your doorstep, you know? And I think that that's exactly why that's a terrible thing, because eventually crap will hit the fan for you, and it frustrates me so bad. But just being able to not be short-sighted about this stuff, right? Like just being able to have an understanding that like what's good for myself will likely be good for the larger population. And if I don't want people doing this to me, or if I don't want to be sick, maybe I don't want to don't want other people to be sick either. You know, just like a basic sense of empathy would go a long way.
Before it hits you.
Before it hits you, right? Before it even has
don't
to
do
get
a
that
Chris
close.
Christie, be like, oh, I've got it and it was bad. Wear a mask. Because now you seem fake.
I get you, man. Like, be able to do the right thing before that time comes. I agree, man. So, how you feel about that? You think we had a chance to talk about it pretty fully?
Yeah.
All right, Zen, appreciate you, man. Thank you for that comment. I hope that there were some little tidbits in there that might have been on topic, because I know towards the end it kind of got off on a tangent.
I always get off topic.
But we appreciate you, man. Appreciate you always leaving great feedback like you do, and I'll be excited to hear your thoughts and stuff. So with that being said, guys, take it easy. We'll talk to you guys in the next video.